I have a long history with trying to go treasure hunting. I think the first time I ever remember really thinking about it as being a possibility, when I was like 10 years old, I saw an episode of Unsolved Mysteries where they talked about a gangster in the 20s named Dutch Schultz that had stashed away somewhere in the Catskills a chest full of a lot of his take. He buried it up in this Catskills somewhere because he was going to court and he thought he was going to go to prison and whatever, and just didn't want it all to be able to be taken, so he went and put it up there. And then he supposedly ends up getting killed before he can go and get it. Another guy was with him. They made a map. The other guy came back and talked to people about it. They both got killed because of it. No map is known to exist anywhere. This is all just legend. And I became so obsessed with it that for the next 7 to 8 years of my life, I swear I thought about that treasure every single day. So finally, about 3 weeks before my junior year of high school was supposed to start, I was just fed up with the nothingness that I felt about my life. That I took my dad's credit card and bought a one-way train ticket to this small town in upstate New York that's near where the treasure is supposed to be. And I had one bag that had like a sleeping bag and a tent in it, and one bag that had clothes in it, and I had cut the heads off of some golf clubs, and I was going to use these golf club shafts, and I was just going to go walk around in the Catskills Mountains with these golf club shafts, trying to pound them into the ground with a hammer until I hit something that was hard and metal, and then I was going to dig it up. And I was 150,000% convinced that this was going to happen. And I bought a one-way train ticket, like $750, something like that, right before school was about to start. And just took off one morning. And I left a note that my mom's van was at the train station, and they showed up there, and the van was there, and they started trying to figure out where I was. My brother does... What is this guy doing? My brother does an impression of my dad, saying, "Oh, he went to Disney World. He went to Disney World." That's hilarious. But yeah, they figured out from the credit card number. I'd actually tried to get enough money out of the ATM to pay for it, and if that had happened, they never would have found me. But because I used his card, they knew what train I was on. I didn't even buy a seat because I didn't want to have to deal with other people. I wanted to be able to just hide out. So I bought a freaking little room that was just like the chair turns into the bed, but I had like one back corner of a car to myself. And the train starts going, and I was like, holy shit, this is actually happening. It was crazy. I'd like to see our mother's reaction to hearing this story.
Yeah.
Yo, use guys, Philly cheesesteak.
What was... Hey, try
that fucking time?
Try to remember... No, I did not. I'm sorry.
Pussy.
Try to remember back to the day that I left to go find the treasure in New York. Or try to remember her reaction. Or
Mom's?
like how the whole course of events went down. See if you can remember it.
It was... My first initial memory is Dad kind of... What the hell's that noise? I want to drink some of this water so we can have the...
No, that's okay. That's just a trip that's been sitting there.
Dad entered the scene wherever I was at in the house, I'm not sure, and said, "Tim's gone." Like that. And he's holding that piece of paper that you wrote your fucking plans on. And he's like this. You know, Tim's gone. And he's like, he starts reading the fucking paper, and I'm like, yeah, take it from me, I'll read it myself. And I don't know what my initial thought was. I didn't really feel any emotional, like, oh, this is crazy thought like I did when you got on the bus and weren't at the singing recital in England.
Oh, yeah, that one.
That fucking freaked me the fuck out. I think it's because that happened so long ago. Whoop whoop, for sale. Booty boo. Because it happened so long ago, it kind of, you know, I don't know, melded me into the person who could handle it, I don't know. But I knew you were fucking on a trip, and then that's when I found out that you had dislodged the garage door and took in the truck, the van and stuff. I don't even know what time of day this was. We can ask Dad, but... And where did you leave the note?
It was on Kathy. Remember that folding out futon thing we had that we called Kathy?
Called Kathy. I have not thought about her in fucking since before I got in that car accident.
Oh, jeez.
Wow, we're brilliant. Kathy, you bitch. Wow, that was in your room?
Yeah.
I don't know if they noticed the car. I mean, they must have noticed it early, right? I feel like I didn't hear about this till like lunchtime, but that can't be right. And then Dad basically...
Well, I had gone downstairs and run into Dad. I thought he would have been gone from work already. So I had seen Dad that morning. I just was like, oh, I thought you'd be gone to work. And then I just went back to bed until he left for work.
Really?
Yeah.
Where did you see him? You were downstairs?
When he was like eating breakfast. I saw him that morning, yeah.
Were you fully dressed or were you just...
I don't know. I don't remember.
Like, I'm just going for...
But, okay, so...
basically, Dad was just on the phone for quite a long time trying to figure out where the fuck you could be. And for a minute, he's like... He hangs up the phone. He's going to Disney World. He's going to Disney World. Just convinced. And then, I don't know, an hour later or something, they had some more information and figured out where the fuck you were. I think that's when you got pulled off Dallas, is that right?
Yeah, Fort Worth.
You only got
Fort Worth.
4 hours, 5 hours away, right?
Yeah, that's a good thing, though.
My biggest memory of it is when y'all pulled up home, I was out front, and you got out of the car and looked up at towards the door just like this, with that fucking... with that fucking Splash Town season pass look on your face. And I was like, this nigga. And I hugged you around the neck. I was like, you fucking crazy fuck. That's when I started growing gray hair, I think.
Jeez.
That was it late? It seemed like that was already dark when they got you, right?
God, it was close. That was a long day.
They drove there together. I wonder what they talked about the whole way.
I know, right? That's something I've always wondered. But like, what did Mom think? How did Mom react?
I don't have any reaction.
Did you hear it from Dad?
Yeah. Yeah, the first thing I heard was, Tim's gone. Huh. And he had the fucking paper in his hand, and he's like, he fucking left. You know, he's tripping because he was just a little boy, basically, compared to now, you know, when he was like a sophomore or something.
Yeah, it was like less than a month before my junior year started.
Halfway through the summer?
Mm-hmm. Like 2/3 of the way, maybe.
How long had that idea planned?
8 years.
How long had you been putting it in effect? Like that summer? Like,
oh, dude, I don't know. I remember having a conversation with an actual person at Amtrak and saying that I was buying the ticket for my son. I couldn't believe it. I went to the ATM the day before I bought the actual ticket, and I tried to get, and I think I bought it like right before I left too. It was because they would have found out if I had bought it any significant amount of time before I was supposed to leave.
that's a good thing.
So yeah, terrific way.
Had this been 30 years ago, you would have got another planet over there.
Yeah, dude, if I had been able to get money out and bought the ticket with cash, I would have been disappeared.
Yeah. Showed back up with facial hair and shit, ready for junior year.
Man,
Being a bald head.
God, that would.
Bunch of porno clips in your back, in your pocket, porno mag clips in your wallet. From my travels.
So, I'm on the train. They're looking for me. They find out where I am. The conductor comes to the... Oh, actually, before that even happened, I had gotten through breakfast, and I sat with this old couple, and I'm a 17-year-old kid by myself. Of course they're going to try to talk to me. So I have to come up with this entire story that luckily I had thought some of it out, but I talked about how I was going to, like, visit my grandparents in this small town, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going all the way to here. And they're like, oh, really? We're going even farther than that. And I was like, oh, so you're going to be with me the whole time? Oh, that was a rough moment. But I had like $100 cash, and the meals were going to be free, but if I wanted anything in between, which I brought none of, I was going to have to, pay for it with money. And I either got hungry between breakfast and lunch, or I missed one of those, and I went to this little store they had where they had barely nothing to eat, and spent like $10 just on stuff to get me through till the next meal, because I hadn't planned for food. I was so convinced that I was going to find it and come back and it was going to be all good. So that ended up, I've come to realize that that's pretty ridiculous, that I should not have done that.
Courage wears a crimson coat, trimmed in trappings bold. Knowledge dons a dress of note, fame's cloth is gold. Far they range and fair they roam, much they do and dare, while grey-gowned patience sits at home and weaves the cloth they wear. What follows is something I did write. Its sudden arrival on paper should not be confused with how long it took to get there. Some stories must move at their own pace and in their own time. This is one of them. When the Vietnam War came along, I found myself a fighter pilot major in the Air Force. All the frailties of humankind had manifested themselves in that beautiful place and that terrible situation. Lyndon Johnson had summed it up under the heading of saving South Vietnam and all of Southeast Asia from communist aggression. I bought into that pretty good. All the pilots did. The endless hours of classroom training and sorties flown on the gunnery ranges around the world had bred us to it. It was almost umbilical. How faint it seems to me now, and how dreadful it still must be for so many others.
It's freaking cold out there. Oh, God. Oh, it's cool to be above the clouds like this. Real nice. Oh shit, it's been this whole time. That's funny. I sure hope that the treasure is where I believe it is. I can't expect it to be there, because expecting something to happen is just gonna open me up to being disappointed when it doesn't happen, but I hope it's there, because that would be really awesome. I've been putting a lot of emphasis on like things that I noticed to be what seem like omens. One of them recently, which is weird, was that one of my kids was doing a book report on Daniel Boone, and she had to read a book about him, and then we had to come up with this report that actually she needs to keep working on this week, and then we're going to finish it up next week when I'm home.
Okay. This is Daniel Boone. I was just reading a whole page. It's that long. It was about Indians captured 3 girls. 3. And now I can read the whole book to you, but my dad's making me read the whole thing. So I'll just read along the way. This is a very colorful page. When he was 82, he walked all the way to Yellowstone. Then he walked back.
He just struck me as being a lot like Forrest seems to be from reading The Thrill of the Chase and Too Far to Walk. He seems like Daniel Boone would be a guy that he would want to emulate. And the very last page of the book says that Daniel Boone had ended up in Missouri, is where he was living, and at 82 years old, after already walking from, I think, Kentucky to Missouri, he had made a boat for his family, but he walked from Kentucky to Missouri when he was like 64, and I think when he was 82 or 84, it said he walked to Yellowstone, which I assume meant from Missouri. So to think that an 82-year-old guy could do that, it would be pretty awesome if 79, 80-year-old guy went to this place that I'm going, and that somehow our minds are on the same wavelength, and that would, I don't know if I could believe it if it actually happened. I don't know if I would believe it, but I know it'll happen if I don't go and look. That's all I know. So, The Alchemist, that I was going to talk about. There's this book, I think it was written in like 1989, 1987, something like that, by this guy in Brazil. And it's been translated into like 100 and something different languages, and millions of people have read it. There's something in the book, before you actually start reading the book, that says that somebody took a picture of Bill Clinton reading this book, if that tells you anything. But it follows this guy that is a sheep herder in some area in Spain. I won't try to think of the actual name, but he's a sheep herder, and he has this dream about the pyramids in Egypt, and he decides to set out and follow that dream, and he has to go through a bunch of stages, and this happening, and bad things happen that correlate with just everything in that book seems like it follows this same path that I've been on, and it's just some dude made it up, but I have to take that as a sign, because my brother just got me this book for Christmas last year, after I had already once gone looking for this, and it just struck a chord with me, and just there's a lot of details about it that it's crazy how similar it seems to my life. Also, the second Amazing Spider-Man movie that just came out. That sounds weird, but that seems to follow my story very closely too. It's weird. So back to my treasure hunting. I was on that train, and the conductor came to my little room and was like, your parents are worried about you, so we're gonna have you get off at Fort Worth. And I was like, oh, okay. So whenever we stopped to pick up people in Fort Worth, it had been about 5 hours, I think, that we had been on the train. It left like 7 o'clock in the morning. It was probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. And I had to get off and sit at the train station. And my parents had I don't know how long they'd been driving, but I sat there for at least a good 3 or 4 hours. And then my parents walked into the train station, and I'm just sitting there with my bags of golf club shafts and tents and stuff. No food to speak of. What on earth was I doing? But I kept thinking about that treasure. Always thought that I would go and look for it again. And I've seen things online of people saying that, they think it's already gone, or that it could be underwater at this point, or it could be under a road, and there's just not enough to that story that, makes it feasible to go and try and find it. Same thing with the Dutchman mine. That is really interesting to me. And I heard some radio interview with a guy that says he knows exactly where it is, but you can't touch it because it's like federal whatever, so I don't know. I wonder about that kind of stuff, but with this, the guy that put it there is still alive. I mean, I know that it's out there somewhere. I feel like I know this guy a little bit, Forrest. I think we're very similar people. So I'm just kind of trying to connect with his spirit a little bit while I'm on this trip as well. That'd be pretty amazing if it is where I think it is, that he went out there. You know, he's just got to find one spot and set it down. Somebody going to look for it, it's going to seem more daunting. But the place that I'm going to concentrate, I can see him showing up there and thinking, you know, I can carry this down there. He mentioned in an interview that he had to take 2 trips, which I assume just means that he had to stop at some point and took a minute and then picked it up and carried it further. So he at least had to walk far enough with it that, and this thing weighs 42 pounds, by the way. It's supposed to be in a box that's 10 inches by 10 inches by 6 inches deep. 42 pounds worth of gold and stuff. So this like 80-year-old guy with cancer is carrying this thing to this place where he set it down. So it's not going to be someplace too crazy where he's got to like climb up cliffs and stuff. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But to think that omen from seeing that Daniel Boone did it and believing that Daniel Boone and Forrest are alike, if he could do it, then Forrest could do it, basically. And I think what's going to deter people from finding it is underestimating this guy. And I hope that's the case. If I get there after putting in all this work and it's there, and to realize that he went to the trouble to put it where I'm going, that would be a pretty amazing thing. And that's why I hope to find it before he dies, because if it's in a place, you know, like a place where I would go to look for it, he deserves congratulations from the person that finds it. So I hope it happens in his lifetime. Hope it happens this week.
After all the bullets and rockets and bombs had finished flying through the trees and across the skies, there was nothing left for us but the memory of 58,266 Americans whose names have been etched chronologically by time of death on that shiny black war memorial, which is constantly being washed clean by the tears of 1 million visitors. In another generation or so, most of those names will be but an asterisk in the history of a forgotten war, a curiosity to wonder about, like the Lincoln Memorial. How unfortunate it is that world leaders are constantly bringing war and death to those of us who are doomed to follow their dictates. Later, elected officials will ask the same question and give the same answer. Why? And never again.
The Alchemist is about this boy or guy that is a sheep herder in some area in Spain, and he is really good at it and he enjoys it, but he had this dream about the pyramids and some treasure that he needs to go find. So he decides that he's going to sell his sheep and travel across the Strait of Gibraltar or the Mediterranean or whatever, somehow get over to Africa and get to the pyramids to find out what this treasure is. I see that part of my life, the part with him is with the sheep, I see that as me before I left home to join the military. And I, wanted something more, so I decided to, cut ties with that part of my life, basically, and just started over from scratch, which is what he did. He sold all of his sheep, and he found a way to get across the Mediterranean, but then he met some guy that was supposed to help him, and the guy ended up just stealing all of his money. So now he's in this new place. He's got no money, he's got no sheep, he's got no people, and this, it's a whole new world to him. He's like starting at zero from when he had this life, and he's got to decide whether he's going to move on in pursuit of this pyramid dream, or if he's going to just go back and do some work and then go back home and get some more sheep and just go on about his life that way. That I see as the actual moment when I left home, because it's not that necessarily that things were going badly, but that I realized that I was completely alone at that moment. What is this guy doing? Is there a freaking wrong side of the road? Okay. And so I arrive in Chicago for boot camp, and there's snow on the ground, there's people yelling at you. I didn't even grab all the clothes I was supposed to grab because, your head is spinning. It's like your head's completely turned off, but there's still input continuously coming at it, even though it's completely shut off. And somehow it's like you become a zombie. So then they let you call home. And I called everybody I knew, and nobody answered the phone. So I was like, okay, whatever, let's do this. So I go through boot camp. A couple weeks later, we get a chance to call people on the phone. I call, can't get anybody on the phone. Called, 5, 6 different numbers, a couple different times, couldn't get anybody. Then, like maybe 3, 4 more weeks later, we get one more chance to go and call people on the phone. And finally, I get my sister on the phone, and she just cries the entire time. So that was the only live communication I had with home through boot camp was my sister crying. But it was my parents. I think it was like the day that I got went for my physical. I went for my physical like a couple weeks before actually leaving, and I think it was that day that I found out my parents were getting divorced. My mom, I think, moved out the night that I went for my physical. It was very weird that I had that. I remember those 2 events happening at the exact same time. True and unrelated, though. It's not like I was doing it because that was happening. But, everybody was just kind of going their own way in the family at that time. Liz was still in high school, so she just was going to have to be with mom all the time. But Ben was out of high school, and my dad was like, trying to figure out what to do with himself, being by himself. So it was, it just worked out to be a good time for me to be away. And I was just trying to emphasize that I was on my own at that point. Somehow they all managed to show up for graduation, though, even with me having no communication with them whatsoever. We did some letter writing, but never talked about graduation. But somehow they got there, and they spent the weekend in Chicago with me, which was really nice. I got to go back to what had happened with my truck. Eventually, I said to my brother while we were at work one day, I was like, man, I don't want to pay for that damn truck anymore. And he's like, oh, I'll take it. Like, he was excited for it to be his car, and I was like, are you serious? And then from a friend of his that he umpired baseball with, he got this old 2-door Pontiac Grand Prix that was awesome. I had that car for I don't know, maybe the last 3 or 4 months. So I leave, and my sister starts driving that car while I'm gone. And then by the time I get home from boot camp at my first school, they had traded it in, and she was driving the car that she had a huge payment on, just like I just had been. So now there was no car for me. And then he does work it out to where he can get me another car to take with me. But this was literally, this car was falling apart. It almost stopped starting before I even left home. The starter was crapping out on it. Every time I tried to start it, it took longer and longer, and I was like, man, this doesn't sound right. And he's like, oh yeah, it's okay. Before I even got to North Carolina from Texas in that car, the starter died at a gas station in the ghetto in Atlanta. And I had to, somehow there was an AutoZone right next door. And I went in there and I talked to the guy at the cash register, and I was like, my car won't start. Did you know anybody that could come and help me? I was like, this is the first big experience that I had to have on my own. Already, boot camp in that first school had been real structured. Now I was literally off on my own for the first time. And this happens. Somehow this guy has a son that's a mechanic, and the son comes to the gas station and puts in a new starter for me on the side of the road, and I was able to finish my trip. Bought the part there at the AutoZone. The guy's son comes and puts it in for me. The two of the nicest people I've ever met in a freaking scary ass place. But I tried to contact every grown up that I knew that could give me some sort of assistance. Couldn't get a single person on the phone. It was good for me and my character, but at the time it's like, man, this is ridiculous. So that's, that was a significant building block. That trip out to North Carolina was big for me.